Frances. Thank you for coming online. Again, I know that your time is very precious and important, and you are based in Singapore. So I know it's morning in there, so I won't take up too much of your time. I just have a few questions for you. We want to introduce you to the FFA members, and yeah, we want to get to know you a bit more. So, first of all, introductions. Can you tell us about your background, your professional journey in the field of fraud prevention?
Hi, Rose, and thank you for having me. Really glad to be able to share this journey, and hopefully, it will inspire other people to jump into this fraud fighting um, adventure on their own as well. Well, I didn't start in fraud or risk management. My background was in advertising and marketing. So there is a future for those who are curious about fraud fighting to jump into this adventure together. At some point in my career, I decided to make a switch into risk management, and I did that. And I was then given an opportunity to build a fraud learning and awareness team, simply because I have a strong communications background. And so, building learning and drawing awareness, that's something that I'm good at. And so that was the opportunity I was given. So when I was exposed into the fraud team, I learned a lot and got really passionately interested in the world of financial crime. And through that, it inspired me to do what I can in my capacity, using my expertise to find ways to raise awareness where then unsuspecting victims could protect themselves and mitigate the risk. So that's how I got into fraud.
Is there anything like super scary, like an experience for you, or like a situation you were put in and, like you solved it at the same time, or maybe not?
Oh, well, fraud prevention is really a journey and it's evolving. Let me share the first experience I had in investigating this. I received a call in the morning, and it was about a syndicate that is targeting a retirement village in the UK. And what happened was, it was an investment scam. And so it started with one victim in the village. So as you can imagine, in a village, you have so many elderly individuals. They were sold a fake investment, a fake bond, and from word of mouth. So just from being well-meaning neighbors, they then told their neighbor and said, "Oh, this is such a good investment. You know, we are already in our sunset years. We should be thinking about what we can leave for our family, our grandchildren." And so from one person to another person to another person, it then built up into a concentrated fraud scam. When we received the call, somebody came to the bank and wanted to withdraw, well, the investments for their bonds, but we don't sell those bonds. And that was how we discovered this syndicate and this fraud scam. So we reported to the police, we traced the money, we followed it, and we were able to work with our partners, our banking partners from one country to another to trace the money. And at some point, unfortunately, it stopped because it went into a jurisdiction where in some countries, we just didn't have that kind of penetration. Even with our work with Interpol, we weren't able to penetrate to trace the money. And unfortunately, that scheme dropped. So, to your question, were we able to prevent it or were we able to stop it? We weren't able to solve it. We were able to stop it, but we weren't able to recover the monies because this scheme very frighteningly actually has happened and started happening for a few years. And so that's how they were able to trap so many individuals into that scheme. Also, fraud is actually very scary. And when you have victims with very good intentions and they spread the word of mouth, it's how it snowballed. There is really a pace that we weren't able to stop in the initial years.
Thank you for sharing that story. I guess my takeaway from that is hopefully we can all learn from it, right? And maybe
Mm.
make better decisions or try to figure out ways to how to fight it again continuously, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I've got another question for you. I'm sure FFA members would be interested to know expertise and achievements. So, like specific areas within fraud prevention, like what's your specialty or your favorite, or can you talk a little bit about that? Like what excites you about it?
Every day is different. Every case, there are similarities, but there are also a lot of differences. And what I right now focus more on, it's on fraud that target victims that can't really help themselves. For example, in the example that I gave, they were all seniors, they were all elderly. And with fraud today and cybercrime and cybersecurity, there is it's very blurred lines. In large institutions, we are given specialty and specialized pillars where we focus on. However, in the real world, where victims fall and are preyed on, well, the bad guys don't really have pillars to say, oh, you know, bad guy one, you specialize in this, bad guy two, you specialize in that. As far as they're concerned, they're all sharks in a big pool, and everybody is just fresh meat available for them. Um, that's being very harsh and blunt, actually. uh, well, so for me, I do like to work with organizations and in aspects that focus on the vulnerable, so the elderly, special needs, children. So these are the areas that I have a particular interest to work in, and so I do a lot more research, and I work with institutions and technology companies that could then build preventive tools in those areas.
Is there like a new technology this year, like, that have made like improvements to your like the way you attack or fight crime, or solve these investigations? Is like, and it doesn't have to be this year. It could be like a long-standing, like 5-year technology that is still doing great to this day.
Mm. I won't call out any particular company, but I'll give you an example. So a few years ago, I was trying to build a model to predict emerging fraud before it happens. So this was relying on trends, on reports that we read on the news, and then overlaying with incidents and trends that we observe in the company. So I jumped into the project, we briefed it out, and conceptually it is doable. However, based on the technology from a few years ago, it just took too long to build, and the cost was quite hefty. So the project didn't pull through, so we abandoned it. Now, this year, as I am invited to trade shows, I speak to different exhibitors, I speak to different companies, and I took the same idea, very similar concept. And when I discussed this with different tech companies, and I'm not surprised that based on the technology today, and this is just in a few years of 5 to 6 years, how technology has progressed to the extent that that particular concept from 5, 6 years ago, it's viable today in a much shorter time and lower cost. So, and it's all using machine learning, thanks to AI development. So fraud prevention, or rather fraud detection, and emerging fraud trends can be detected in a much quicker way than we could have 5, 6 years ago.
I completely agree with that. It's amazing. I think we're kind of lucky to be in the AI stage, right? Like 2023, right? It's almost over 2024. What's next with AI? There's so many things that can happen in the next year. So, how about in terms of collaboration and community engagement? Like, do you believe in collaboration within, like, the community? Like, can it strengthen like fraud prevention efforts? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, definitely. But before I go on to that, I also wanted to call out to your comment that yes, AI is certainly a big help, but the bad guys are also using it for bad, right?
That's right.
Where we try to use it for good, the bad guys are using it for bad, and they are so much quicker in adopting it. So we all just need to be more vigilant and increase the awareness and education to the public. Back to your question, collaboration, certainly, 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 collaboration is key. The lines between different areas of risk management is blurred, so that collaboration within risk management principles need to happen. The collaboration between fraud fighters, between banks, between technology companies, between governments, between countries, just need to happen. And how we are even talking right now, Rose, you are on the other side of the globe, I'm over here. The fact that we are able to connect just indicates that collaboration is so possible regardless of where you are. I've been invited by different countries to speak on the topic, to share my expertise, and time zones just doesn't, it's not a big deal anymore. So collaboration should happen and collaboration must happen.
I agree. It's such a powerful tool to collaborate in this year and age now. Looking ahead, like what do you envision for the future of fraud prevention? And how can professionals prepare for evolving challenges or changes?
I think professionals need to look at just themselves, not only from the fraud lens. Back to what I said earlier in this conversation, in many of our institutions, especially when it's large organizations, we all um, have very, I think we all have specialist roles and specialist pillars. Going forward, the lines between all these disciplines, between being a financial crime expert, a fraud expert, a cybersecurity expert, those lines are going to be blurred. And I also think that policymakers are going to come up with guidances that will challenge all these specialist roles within organizations. When you are in risk management, the discipline of different risk management areas will also be blurred. So in the next 5 years, I expect a certain amount of muddiness as all these disciplines recalibrate themselves and look at themselves with different portfolios. So, as risk professionals or as fraud professionals, we need to then widen our lens, widen our background and our knowledge in fraud risk prevention and look at it linguistically and not semantically. When we look at it as a language, fraud, what falls into fraud? There are a lot of things that fall into fraud, and the entire fraud pipeline is just longer. So it starts off with cyber, it transits into uh, fraud, it then continues into financial crime. Just looking at fraud alone in the middle portion of the entire crime pipeline just doesn't cut it anymore. So my advice to fraud professionals is widen your lens, broaden your knowledge. That would be more helpful in prevention and be more helpful to the potential victims out there.
I love it. Thank you for that advice. Um, just another fun question for you. So, outside of your professional life, what are some hobbies or interests that you enjoy?
I speak to a lot of young people, and that's what I enjoy. In right now, I'm trying to build a mentorship program to empower youth, to empower youth. So it's youth to empower youth. It's youth empowering youth. Well, I'm speaking to a few organizations that are really interested in this thought. And one of the passion is how do we bring first world knowledge into developing countries. So as I speak to all these young individuals who have so much potential, who have so much exposure, how do they then share this knowledge with youth in developing countries that have lesser opportunity for exposure, lesser opportunity to learn? And I'm just really excited to see where this journey is going to go for all of us.
Thank you so much, Francis, for coming online.